going to talk about here. So you're braced up. She kind of jerked there over quickly. And we're going to talk about the first time that you heard about sex. And so if you'll start off, no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not going to do that to you. No.
You should have sat over there.
Do you have a good story? We're all good friends here already.
I really don't.
Okay, all right. Well, my name is Robert Oglesby, and I teach up at ACU, and I teach several courses, one of which is a course on sexual and moral development of adolescents. And my students have shortened that just a bit. They call it Sex Bible, right? They do it. And so I refer it to as Sex Bible now because that's so easy and simple. But I am a survivor of parenting. 3 kids, all gone. Empty nest. It's awesome. I can't wait to tell you more about that. But I have some grandkids. Got 5 here, 6 coming. Number 6 is on the way. So our family knows something about sex.
6 more.
Not 6 more, no. Anyway, we're going to try to help you with some ideas and things that hopefully will be a blessing to you. I don't want you to get to the end of this session and go, oh man, I feel worse than I came. I'm going to try to give you some usable things, some practical things, and we can talk and have some fun with this. I'm going to show you my family background. I grew up in the days of I Love Lucy. Had that as a role model. I had Dick Van Dyke as a role model. That was basically my family system, how things work. My mother, who is now 88 years old, I grew up in Dallas area. She never had a job outside the home. Her full-time job was to raise an incredible son like me and my sister. So that's our day. The problem is our times have changed a little bit. Now we don't have I Love Lucy. We have the Modern Family is now a part of our world, and that's a little different than I Love Lucy and Dick Van Dyke. And then, of course, Lord help us all, we have the Kardashian clan. Now, they're a little odd and weird, but the oddest part is that we like to watch and know all about how they do family life. And they're just weird, just weird. So it's a little different day, a little different time in so many ways. But here's what I want you to start with. At your table, share with everybody there what is incredibly different about when you grew up and the world that you see your kids growing up for just a little bit. So share that at your table. How's it different from your growing up time?
Yeah, I would say like being able to just go play with
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like for all of us. Like even when you're watching the shows,
if he tries to watch a show, he just
yeah.
Parents work to be safety.
Yeah, like our kids, we're trying to maintain 90s parenting as much as we can.
Never where we are, and now we're starting a new world that's like we're walking down the street. And is where we are. Maybe that too. Like safety.
All right, if I could stop you for a little bit, I'd love to hear from a few of you, a few tables. What's different? What's different in your kids' day compared to yours? What's the biggest difference?
I think the level of communication is like our kids ask us questions that we probably would have not asked our parents.
Okay, so a little more overt questions?
Yes.
Okay, you want to enlarge on that or not?
Well, Betsy daughter asked her what a bisexual was. She didn't have the term right, but bisexual.
Okay, a biosexual. I'm sure there's one of those somewhere. We just don't know. I'm going to add that into my notes, biosexual, because there's about 64 different kinds now these days. What's different? Somebody else.
Like internet, and like maybe that even be like why she knew to ask that question, but
Absolutely.
just internet.
Technology,
Educating.
Technology in general. How's that change the game from your day? What would you have to do
Then
that
like maybe a VCR, watch a movie versus Netflix, like
a movie?
entertainer.
How many of you grew up with your earliest recollection? You remember 4 TV channels on your TV? Anybody? 4? Okay. There you go. Good. What else? Anything different?
I think also, back then we didn't, I'm 51, so
Okay.
we didn't have computers, so I was a teenager, no cell phones, now kids can say Alexa and ask them anything
Yeah.
they want to, before going to their parents.
If you're curious about something, where'd you go? Where'd you go to get information?
My mom.
Your mom?
It's like
Encyclopedia. What is that? Encyclopedia. I did that too. One of the things that I noticed, and I think I heard one of the groups is this issue called safety. Compared to when I grew up, compared to now, man, we did stuff that was unbelievable. Did y'all ever ride in a car and you didn't wear a safety belt or even come close to it? Never. Yeah. Pallets in a station wagon where you can walk up and down. Dad would hit the brakes every once in a while. The kids would all go rolling up to the front. It was awesome. It was a great deal. Bicycle helmets. Man, I would have been made fun of in my neighborhood if we had a bicycle helmet on. You rode with your hair, out wildly. Today, it seems like a lot of parents feel like their kids have to be 100% safe to go do anything. I walked to school, to my elementary in Dallas, Texas, all 3 blocks without a parent holding my hand. Walked there. Went to junior high, that was 10 blocks. No, mom, dad, maybe they didn't love me. Maybe they didn't care if I got kidnapped. But for the most part, they just didn't do it. And then, of course, they let us ride these death machines. Do you remember that?
The other day.
They're hard to find. Now, we'd spin those suckers, and then you'd find out and discover about speed and gravity and all that stuff. Your buddy, hey man, we go this fast, he goes 10 feet that way. It's awesome. Or we'd slow it down for little Lisa because she can't hold on quite as tight as Billy could. But those things just didn't seem to be as big a deal. Now, when I strap in my grandkids, I feel like they're like astronauts that I'm putting all in, and they've got to be strapped down. It's really a big deal. And then this generation coming up, I'm not sure they're going to make it without you and without me. They just do really dumb stuff, and you just go, why would you want to? They call it Generation Y, in the last decade. This is why. You're going, why would you do that? That is not smart, not bright. This is how most of us like to do parenting, is duct tape them to a wall and pick them up at graduation. That would be a nice, by the way, these are not my children, so don't call CPS on me. Just a picture. Or we just give them a look, and the look will take care of everything, and they'll just moderate and sit down and be really cool about us. It doesn't typically work that way, but if we don't start fixing some things early on, then they start doing worse things, and things that are more embarrassing to them, possibly in a public arena, where you going, that ain't the way it goes, honey. Or you have someone like this who doesn't learn a little merry-go-round. Yeah. You just wonder, when did he start picking up, hey, this is a really bad idea to do that? Maybe it's because some of their fathers start doing things like this. and think that makes perfect sense to do. Or another father who did this particular deal. Yeah, it's just cringeworthy, isn't it? You just don't want to do those type things. But here's the thing I want us to ask, and these are the two big questions that I am going to ask my HU students. They'll be in my class. I have about 50 or 60 students in class in a few weeks, and I'll ask them this question at the beginning of that sex Bible class, and that is, who told you about sex first? And I'll get all their answers. And then I'll ask them this question: how many of you had your parents tell you about sex first? And there'll be about 10% of the room will raise their hand. That's all. And then I'll start asking, who'd you find that from? Older brother. How about you? Peer, 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 peer. Older sister. And we go around the room. And then we start asking that incredibly important question of how did they explain sex to you? And it's horrible. It's just frightening to hear what they said. But here's the reason why I wanted to share this with you. This coming from kids who come out of homes just like yours. If you're not the first person into the game, you will not be considered the expert. They will. Whoever gets there first tends to be seen as the expert. That's why you want to be in this conversation first. That's why I'm going to kind of urge you. I'm going to tell you several reasons why you probably need to be thinking about younger rather than older. I asked the last class, hey, when did you find out about sex? And we had some people in here who were not finding out about sex or hearing about sex till they were 13 and 14 and 15 years old. Because they come from a different generation. That's not happening anymore. You're not going to get to that age, and it's going to be younger than some of you think. Some of you are thinking, well, I'll do it when I was told, and some of you learned at 11, 12. And I'm going to tell you, that is too late as well. Too late. So what type of things are they learning? Here's some of the quotes from my class. You can't get pregnant the first time you do it. True or false? Really false. You can't get pregnant if you're standing up while you're doing sex. True or false? False again. Here's the one. You'll love this one. You can make your own condom with saran wrap and rubber band. That's terrible at multiple levels, let me just tell you. But you know what? I had two little kids who were in my youth group at Southern Hills who tried that because a peer group member got to them first, which made them the expert about sex. And that little homemade condom didn't work right. And they were scared. And they should be. But what if some parent had been there first? What if some parent had given them the information so they could go in the front of the line as the expert regarding this? It's a really scary thing. And the more I hear about some of these things, the more it just petrifies me and think about what's coming next. Now, the next question I will ask my class is, what message did the church give you? And they will have a variety of answers for that as well. Here's the main answer. My church didn't talk about it. So I'm just going to tell you right now, I applaud you for even allowing this to happen today, to be able to say, we're going to actually talk about this subject inside a church building, and no one has been struck dead yet this morning, I hope. But most of the churches say nothing. Some churches say, yeah, I'll tell you what they said. Their message was, don't. Just don't. Well, okay. Somebody else. Oh, we had a deal, but the guys all went there and the girls went in over there and they talked about some stuff. I'm not sure exactly what they said, but they talked about sex at some level. And then the kids got together after the class and said, what'd they say in your class? What'd they say in yours? The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class is over. The guys and girls are all talking about sex in the hallway after class But I said, what's the message you get when your church doesn't talk about it or says you got to separate off and you got these big secrets about sex? And they said two primary answers. One, it must be horrible that we cannot talk about it inside a church. It must be awful. Two, God doesn't know anything about it. He's got nothing to say. He has laryngitis when it comes to sex. Well, who invented it? God himself. But the kids' message is, it's horrible and God knows nothing about it. Here, the culture is talking about it, I'll guarantee you. They're talking about it loudly. They are preaching at your kids. And it's musicians, it's movies, it's the Kardashians, everybody's trying to get something said about sexuality with your kid. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's some things out there that you may not even be aware of. If I said the letters W-A-P, does that ring a bell? You know, I got one. Somebody. Okay, you teach high school. Thank you. You can all ask her when it's over. I'm not going to say it on the tape. You're going to say it off tape. Thank you. Or if I said some lyrics: 1 margarita, 2 margarita, 3 margarita. You know that one too, I bet. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you don't know, I'm just telling you, they're singing that song. It's being played in a lot of their earbuds right now. It's preaching. It's preaching. And they're saying wild sexuality, and it's talking about, and I'll go on record, we're talking about things about oral sex, we're talking about anal sex, we're talking about all different types of sex in a song. Do y'all remember this group? I believe they're called the Beatles. Y'all remember Beatles? Y'all old enough to remember them? Played them once or twice, maybe? They were revolutionary. They came across the waters, and it was kind of a risque type group. Oh, they were so risque. Their song, I Want to Hold Your Hand. Whoa. Whoa. Once she tells you the lyrics, very different than holding your hand. They're not talking about holding hands. I'll guarantee you. And they make no bones about it. They're saying the words. They're saying, anatomy. I wish we could get back to I want to hold your hand, but it ain't happening. So, please allow me to keep going. I don't know if I know how to do that. There we go. I think the church has done a mixed message. You get my drift? Saying one thing, doing another. Sexuality was God's idea, and yet we won't talk about it. That sends them some bad messages. So we got to get back in front of this. We got to start talking about this in a little overt fashion. And I think in some ways what we're looking at is we're just trying to change the messaging just a little bit so that our kids can hear a message from God first, not culture first. Here's another big question I'm always asked is, when do I start talking to them? Okay, I'm going to tell you, I've already said earlier, right? Here's why. If you go to the classic definition of puberty, period of transition that marks a child's transition into adulthood, it includes several things. We focus on the physical, but there's a lot more going on there. It's brain development, physical and hormonal changes, capability of sexual reproduction, and we get really hung up on the physical. I'm telling you, there's a ton going on. For everything you see on the outside that's changing really fast, there's tons of stuff happening on the inside really fast. It's really confusing. It's hard. You can remember probably some of the weirdness that you thought about as you were growing up, as you went through a puberty phase with that. So puberty itself has changed. I'm going to tell you, your experience at puberty is different than your own kids. As a society and a culture, we're at a different stage completely. I'm going to give you a quick look at puberty across a lot of time periods. Post-Civil War, we're right there. Menarche, which was the first period for a woman, happened at 16 years of age. Okay, that was on average. So some women were actually having that happen at 17 years of age and some at 15, but averages out around 16 years of age. Now, some of you in the room are going, whoa, didn't know that. So it's dropped. And if you look in the 1990s, it dropped down around 12 or 13. But then look again at now, it's now at 11 and 12. And it continues to go downward. Has not gone back up. It's kind of stabilized on Menard. But look at the last thing. Some secondary sexual body changes are starting now at 9 years old. Secondary changes of everything from voice change to breast bud development. They're not full breast, but they're beginning that. And it's things of pubic hair and all those things start to happen now at 9, announcing, hey, I'm changing and I'm becoming an adult. But what grade level are we talking at 9? Third and fourth. Do you think that's going to have any difference on when you start talking to your kids about sexuality? Absolutely. You're not going to, if you're thinking 12 and 13, probably not. You need to start thinking now. Those of you who have 6, 7, 8-year-olds need to be thinking, we need to get our talk ready. We need to start thinking about this now, not later. You don't have a long time. And I would tell you, I put my students in little role plays in class and have them explain sex to each other inside of class, and they were horrible at it. I mean, they are horrible. Here's their best line. When a father and mother love each other very much, and then they just like hit a brick wall, and it's like, boom. They don't have anything. One guy, hilarious. The guy said, well, man and woman love each other very much and all that, and he's all good, and then he stops and he goes, it's like the guy's a car and the woman is a garage. And the man drives into the garage, and I'm going, you are going to screw your kids up so badly. That is horrible. They're going to be scared of garages from here on in from the way you're describing sex. So it's not easy. That's why I would say to you, you need to start thinking, how am I going to explain that? Do some trial and errors with each other to say, how would you explain this? And we'll do some of those here in a little bit. But bottom line is, that's a change that you need to be aware of, very aware of, that the game is going to be starting earlier than you ever thought. So who's easier as it goes through puberty? Is it easier for a guy to go through puberty or a girl? Just why? My students have definite opinions about this one, by the way. But why guys or girls? Who's got the better deal? Guys, why? I think you're
Just the social impact of 13-year-old girls on 13-year-old girls is miserable.
it's rough there. Good. What else? Guys or girls? Why is it better?
Could we separate and then give our answer?
How about you write yours down and then I'll read it for you. What do you think?
Guys don't have to have a period.
That's a winner. That's a clear win on the guys' side. You don't have those type of things. Any other advantages, guys? Do you remember some of you, especially who are early into the puberty party stuff?
Isn't it cool to get hair?
It's cool to get hair. Yeah, absolutely. I'll never forget. I was driving to Six Flags on a church trip as a teenage kid. I hadn't gone through puberty yet. I looked up at some dude. He had his arm around his girlfriend. That was a big deal. And I looked, and he had hair sticking out under his arm. And I thought, someday that'll be me. I remember that. Weird, sick deal. I wished I didn't have any of that, but it was cool to get it here, though, So that's a big perk. Also for the guys, let me show you just a few. For the most part, we tend to lump everybody together and say puberty's rough on everybody. I think it's a little rougher on the girls, and here's some of the reasons why. For the most part, puberty's a little bit more private for the guys. It doesn't show as much. Now, they'll catch the voice deal. Yeah, they'll make fun of you, and that's real rough. You go through that maybe 6 months, and then you're good. That's not hard. All the other body stuff tends not to be as big a deal. They'll talk about how tall you are, and that'll be a good mark, right? And if you're into athletics, you're taller than the other guys, you create more muscle mass a little faster, that's all good. And so it's a pretty nice experience. More predictable changes for the most part. Ours, we're not quite as hormonal in how that affects us, I think. The voice cracking usually is fairly temporary, so it's a pretty good deal for the most part. So those of you guys, blessings on you. It's a little bit harder for the women. Signs of change are more noticeable because your body all of a sudden starts showing very, very differently, which brings the second thing, sometimes unwanted attention. You don't want everybody to notice. And you don't have people come up and go, hey, boy, I sure noticed your breasts were really growing, here at church. That doesn't play well in the lobby of the church, right? Here at Pioneer. I don't know what y'all do. That doesn't go at Southern Hills at all. We don't approve of that in any shape, form, or fashion. But you can't really hide that very well. And that unwanted attention can be sexual comments from the guys, especially older guys. And all of a sudden, that becomes a real embarrassing moment for you. And obviously, women are a little more complex with the periods and all that goes with that. And emotions are just really strong, it seems like, with women, especially the ones that were in my house. I walked in one day and my daughter was sitting there crying, and I thought, what happened at school? Nothing. Well, why are you crying? She said, I don't know. I don't know why I'm crying. And you know what? I talked to her and asked more questions, and she did not know. She was just crying. And I was like, okay, well, if this is my new normal, I'll have to get used to it. I got a lot of these women folk in my house, and we'll just have to get along, with crying women around me. Luckily, their mother is a crier as well. So we all got along really well. But for the most part, it's a little tougher experience, it seems like, for the girls. So I want you dads especially to kind of go, just grow out of it and it'll be all right. It's a very tough time. And I hope you had some experiences that were not idyllic as you went through puberty. I hope you'll tap back into that as your kids go through it, because I think it's a big deal. Now, I want to show you one other little deal, and we're going to compare two things. Puberty starting and when people get married. And this is for you church folks, okay, especially because we're trying to sell them on wait until marriage to have sex. Well, back in the old days, 16, 17 years old, their body wakes up and all of a sudden they're married and they get to have sex, and not a big deal. That's easy to talk about. But we don't grow up in that culture. You look to the 90s, well, it's 12 to 13, and then they start getting married at 22.8 years of age, which that's what education did. It kind of bumped that back a little bit from 18. My parents did the deal of, you don't get married while you're in college. Okay, what happens if I get married and they did this? That meant we're going to cut you off financially. So you know what I did? I waited till the week after graduation to marry my daughter. Not my daughter, my wife. Strike that from the tape right now. I did not grow up in Arkansas. Okay, sorry. 10 years. 10 years. How long is 10 years to your kids? If you said, we're going to have to wait to get an ice cream cone for 10 years, how long is that?
Eternity.
Eternity. That's the word, eternity. Forever. I'm going to take you into my middle school mind for just a moment. I know this is going to be a scary place, but I distinctly remember thinking of this as my Bible class teachers were talking about it, waiting until marriage for sex. And I was like, I don't know. And I thought, I'm going to try to do this. I'm trying to be God's guy and all that stuff. And I started doing this bargaining with God himself. This was our little game. I said, all right, God, this deal, 10 years, I'm going to try to do it your way. But you better not. You better not stop this world deal until I've had sex at least one time. And he was faithful in that. Three kids. I got to have it 3 times. It was awesome. Awesome. I love the Lord. He is so good to me. But then look at your kids, what they're going through. So when you say that and say, hey, this is what God has in store for you, and you look at the marriage age going way up high, that's a hard sell. So one of the things that you're going to want to think about in your message is how you talk about marriage, how you talk about sexuality. And I think a lot of what you're up against is culture is saying, cohabitation. Culture is talking about everyone deserves, and it's your God-given right to have sex with whoever you want to, whenever you want to, however you want to. That's the noise on the other side. You're going to say, we're going to teach this intentionally or not as you go. All right. Some age-appropriate information is the very beginning point. Your first sex talk is going to be anatomy talk, and you do this pretty naturally. It happens while they're fairly young. Not a big deal. You're just going to teach them the body parts, and so that's the one most of you are going to do well. I had a slight difficulty with mine because my wife was at the grocery store. I'm at the house with my oldest daughter, who's about 3 years old. I was using the bathroom, and she opened the door of the bathroom and walked in on me. Oh my, and she looks at me and she looks at me going to the bathroom. And I'm going, how do you handle this deal? And she then goes, what's that? Pointing at me. And I'm going, oh no, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it right. Lauren, that's a penis. And she goes, oh. Okay, she walks out. And I'm thinking, yes, I did it. I said the right word, scientific word. I did so well. And then I hear a little song she's singing in our living room while my wife is still gone to the store. And I hear this song, and here are the words of her song that she had made up. Penis, penis. I love peanuts. 3 years old and she's singing about it. My penis as part of her song. So, yeah, I know it's funny for y'all, but it's because it wasn't your kid. It was my kid, and my wife's coming home. And I'm thinking, I got to get to my wife real fast and explain this. And so I hear the garage door going up. I run out. Hey, I need to explain something really fast. She walked in on me. I was not walking around the house without clothes. She walked in. I'm going to the bathroom, and she asked what it was. I said, I told her, just like I'm supposed to do. And she started singing this song. And the song goes, and I sang it again for my wife, penis, penis, I love penis. And she said, well, you better get that word out of her mouth because we're going to church tomorrow morning and she will teach her whole class any new song she does. And I went, okay. And so we went inside and played all sorts of games with different words and all that stuff. We got it kind of out of her mind for that day. But that was the beginning of our sex talk, anatomy stuff. Fast forward a few more years, we're going to talk about age-appropriate information. Well, sometimes it's in questions. They ask you a question. Here was the question on the couch. Lauren looks over at her mom, who was about 8 months pregnant with Greg. So she's sitting there on the couch, and she looks over at my wife in the belly and kind of looks at the TV and then back at her belly. And I went, oh, no. Sure enough, she said, how'd he get in there? And my wife, without missing a beat, said, ask your father. He's an expert in all of these things. And I got to explain about an egg and a seed. Dad supplies the egg. I got to get that right. Mom does the egg. Dad does the seed. And that baby is going to get too big in mommy's belly. You see how big it is? Yeah. He'd run out of room. So Greg is going to come out mom's vagina. Second big word term. She didn't make a song out of that one, by the way. And she goes, huh, any questions, Lauren? No. Got it. Gave her a little more. All these stages that you have, you're going to continue to give more and more and more. You don't give them everything when they're 2 and 3 years old. You're going to give them a little bit more and a little bit more. What my students would say to you is they do not want one big talk. I've actually heard these stories. Son, get in the car. We're going to Dallas all weekend. And they talk about sex the whole weekend. And like the kid is trapped. He can't get out of the car. He wants to jump going down I-20, but he can't get out of the car. Dad's locked the doors. And we're going to talk about this, and you're going to talk about it all weekend long. He does not want that talk. What they say and what they'll tell me and what they're trying to tell you is give me several talks along the way. I don't want one big one. I don't want the talk. I want lots of talks. Not all the time, just every once in a while, check in, let me have more information. Here are some of the things you need to be talking to them about: dating, about coaching life, what's a good practice, not good practice, accountability in where you are, who you're with. Group stuff is a great idea when you date, especially initially. Some of the things that you'll run into with the dating stuff is just sheer, let's communicate. Let's talk about where you are, when you're going to be at places, plan the whole date. I'm amazed at dads who will allow their kid to go, hey, we're going to go to a dinner and a movie, and the movie starts at 9:45, but their curfew's at midnight. And they have no idea what happens between 9:45 and midnight. There's nothing on the schedule. So it's up to the little couple. And I'm saying to a dad, come on, man, earn your dad pay. Where are you going after the movie? Will you check in with us just to let us know? If you don't have a plan, I need to know the plan. What's going to go on. So that is another stage that you're not going to tell your 3-year-old that same story. But you will across time. Pornography, that is one of the most important lessons, especially for you dads, to share with your sons. And that's something you need to talk about with them, including your possible use and addiction of that. Reason why? This is a rampant problem in our country. Not just our churches, not just in Abilene, Little Abilene, I'm saying everywhere. If they're doing the numbers that they're talking about of $14 billion spent on pornography nationally, we're not talking about the perverts at the edge of town. We're talking about their moms, their dads, their uncles, their brothers, preachers, pastors. 1 in 6 pastors have a little pornography problem. 1 in 6. That's a problem. And it's a problem a lot of them can't come out of. We've had our own little problems here in town, and if you pay attention to the TV, child pornography is much bigger than you ever want to know about. But it's here, and it's hard. And one of your kids may get caught up in this if they're not given fair warning. This is powerful stuff. It's a lie. It's not of God at all. But I'm telling you, you don't want to go down that hole. As a father to a son, they need to know about different types of sex, and I know this is going to be tough and graphic. Everything from just vaginal sex, oral sex, anal sex, masturbation with each other. You need to talk about all those because, and with this other little deal called sexually transmitted infections, you can get all those if you don't wear some type of protection in all those areas very easily. And some people think, oh, I can't get it because of oral sex. Oh, yes, you can. You can get most of them easily. We got a lot of kids who are carrying around STIs and Ds in our community. If they step into that sexually active pool here in Abilene, Texas, they're stepping into a place that they're going to have very bad odds of remaining outside that infection pool. It's bad. So do that. Alcohol and decision making is another great thing to talk about, and just say you're usually going to make really poor decisions when alcohol is involved, especially when it talks about sex, consent, and all those things. You can talk about consent when they're young, so they learn that lesson before about consent and don't wind up in a court case with someone saying they did this or that, and they didn't have my consent. Big deal. And there's a really positive message I think we sometimes have in the church of saying to our kids, no, about sex. And then when they get married, it's hard to flip that switch for a lot of the ladies, especially, I think. It's tough for them to go, oh, yeah, now it's okay. I did my oldest daughter's wedding ceremony, a really beautiful thing, great to do. And I put in their Bible that had their name on it, their wedding date, a little letter. That letter, inside that letter was, they were instructed to read it on the way to their honeymoon. And so my daughter started reading that on the way after the ceremony's all over and everybody's gone. And it's basically me stating to her, This is going to be beautiful. It's God ordained. It's God blessed. Your daddy's happy that this is going to be a part of your life that's going to be a rich experience. And I hope you have a blast. I hope you have a ton of sex and enjoy it and pleasure and all that stuff. And you know, I could hear her eyeballs rolling, you know, from the car. And at the very end, I said, P.S. If you have any problems with sex or anything, call me at 325-65. And her eyeballs they were really rolling on that one. Anyway, that's a big deal. If they ask you any really pertinent questions, first thing is, thank you so much for coming to me. I'm so glad you asked. Don't do that freak out face, you know, of, you know, oh no, you know, and they will pick up on whatever attitude you have on that initial look. So try to stay calm. This next one, clarify the question if needed. That will buy you time, is what I call that. Tell me again what you're really asking about. But it's also good about saying, what is the real source of the question? Why are you asking me this question right now? Sometimes that gives you a little time to kind of gather yourself and go into that a little more prepared. Give them time to process information. Once again, I hear the stories of, we're going to tell you all about sex. Do you have any questions? Okay, good. And they're out. Give them a little time to process some stuff that's pretty hard to grasp. And circle back and say, do you have any questions about what we talked about the other day? Well, yeah, I got one more. Okay, let's talk about that. And that tells them, once again, this is not just a one-time deal. It's a big deal. But commitment and intimacy and spirituality and also pleasure as teaching points about sexuality, try to make it sound like it's something good that you want to do. I had a dad, he's a preacher here in town, told his son all about sex, and he got through, and he said, do you have any questions, son? He said, yeah. Do you have to do this? And he said, see me in about 4 years. You know, we'll talk about it again. But basically saying, do you have to? Yeah, well, yeah. And it's a good thing. It's a beautiful thing. And the commitment and the spirituality that goes with this is something to be pursued and thought through. Put sex in the context of marriage, which, by the way, culture is taking it out. They're trying to reframe not only what marriage is, because they're trying to play with that in and of itself, that we're just going to cohabitate, or you know, there can be thruples, 3 people. By the way, that's happening in Britain right now. And you know why? Because you have 2 of the same sex who are gay and 1 who becomes basically the sperm donor, or in reverse, so you can have children. So you go with a threesome as a legal married group. And if they can do 3, then how come you can't do 4 or 5 or 6? And every step away from God's design will cause you more complex problems. But this part of it becomes a teaching moment for you to say, here's what it's about. It's about marriage. It's a male and female in a marriage context, a commitment long term. That helps them with some of the stuff they're going to want to do sexually and say, can we do this? Are you married? Are you going down a wedding aisle? This term we used to use when I was a little kid or growing up as a teenager, this teacher would say premarital sex. I got news for you. Premarital sex is obsolete. They have no intention, many times, that this is leading to a marriage. They're getting very sexually active, and they're not even thinking about marriage. It's just the act or the pleasure. So try to keep it tied in with marriage, just in general. This is a real big principle. Treat them how old they are, not how old they look, because of this early maturity that I've been talking about. Remember, they look on the outside as if they're 17, but they're still a little kid. They're still a little kid inside, emotionally and hormonally even, many times. But they are going to struggle with that, and they'll be pushing you saying, hey, I want you to let me date this person who's much older. Very bad situation. Don't be afraid to say wait. My oldest, once again, she's always really good at hearing us and all. One day she came in and said, "Hey, Dad, a bunch of us are going to the movies today. Can I go?" And I said, "Tell me about a bunch. Who is there?" "Well, it's Billy, and there's Jordan, and there's me and Emily." I said, I'm having a hard time with the group deal. I said, "Why did it stop at 4? And she said, "Well, that's all that's going." I said, "And don't you like Billy, and doesn't she like Jordan?" "Yeah." And I said, "How old are you?" 14. I said, "Nope, not going to happen." She kind of pushed back and said, "Well, why not?" And I told her, I said, "We're not going to do that. We're not doing dating yet." I said, "Someday it'll happen. It'll come. Not today." And she goes, and she kind of got huffy, and she spun on her heels, and she hit our stairs, and she stomped on every stair up to her room. And then I hear crying, not little crying, soul-wrenching crying. That type of deal where they can't catch their breath. And I'm going, man, this is not like her at all. This is weird. And so I let her cry for a little bit longer, and I finally went up there, and I walked in her room and looked on her bed. She's not there, but I still hear the crying going on, and look under her bed, not there. She's in her closet, in a dark closet, crying, this weeping. Crawled in the closet. "Hey, what's the deal?" I said, "This is not like you. What's going on?" She said, "Well, the other kids thought that if you said yes, their parents would crater and they would all say yes." And I said, "You started with the wrong dad, on this deal." And so I pulled out my PowerPoint and showed her how this was. No. My message to her was, "I love you too much to turn you loose yet. I don't think you're ready for this." I said, "But the day will come when you're 32. I will be ready to let you go out and date other guys, or after you get out of the monastery there." But she was, pushing back. And I once again want to encourage all you dads, it's okay to say no. I've seen some dads who sent their daughter out on dates that I promise, if you had asked them, "Can this dude drive your car?" No way. It's a really nice car. And I'm thinking, that's your treasure. That's the one you're supposed to look out for and protect. And yet, you're going to turn them loose at 13 or 14 years old. I don't get that. And I hope you know and understand that. And I can show you some other stuff, some of you dads especially. Now, another big change is our kids are being thrown a ton of information. The problem is you don't have any control anymore as parents about the information flow. In the past, the older generation could decide what you will see and what you won't see. That little phone deal, that's changed the game. The internet has changed the game. They are better at finding information than you are. They can get to information that you can't even get to. They are 2 clicks away or 3 clicks away from seeing everything they want to see sexually. I had to go to the 7-Eleven convenience store and hope that one of the men would buy pornography to see a brief glimpse of a woman topless. They can do it with 3 clicks. Information. They have lots more. It's why their world is very different than yours. You can't stop it. And so we have our little love-hate with technology and think, oh man, it's so bad and so tough. Technology is fantastic in so many ways, but it has some downsides. You can reach the whole world. The problem is the world can reach your kid in the same breath. So some of the things that I would want to point out is all the information they're getting, which is a ton, needs some reflection time. But if you watch your kids, have you ever seen your kids looking at info or something online and they're doing this? Swiping. And they're seeing articles and things to look at, and sometimes it's pictures and Instagram, and they're flipping through it, and they are flat just moving through it. And then every once in a while they'll stop, they'll tap into something and go for it. That's when they're really digging in, if they're really tapping in. But they are sorting information. They need someone beside them at times to help them sort a lot of information. This gives them the world of information so easily. The problem is if they're thinking very shallowly about all the information, they're not thinking deeply about information, including sexuality, including what's going on around the world. One of the things that they're also doing, by the way, is they're sorting stuff here at church. Big, little, no, yes, no, yes. And they need your help on things that are of a spiritual nature, of a sexual nature, of morality nature. What we're looking at is discernment. Discernment is what we're trying to go after with our kids. They cannot discern if they're just swiping stuff and just going, we're just going to sort this information very quickly without much thought. You have to slow the pace down a little bit for them. That is, ask great questions. That's saying, how does that look? I don't know if you've noticed on TV, there are lots of opportunities to talk about morals. I don't know if you've seen maybe last week, maybe something about drag queens in the Olympics by chance. Everybody's worried about was that they trying to rip off the Da Vinci stuff or the painting. That didn't bother me nearly as much as everything else. I'm going, you can have that debate. That was unbelievably ungodly. Everything from anatomy on the screen that you could see if you stop it for just a second, to what does drag queen world have to do with the Olympics in general? But there's some agendas out there. You need to help them sort that. Why do they do that? Why are they pushing that? Is that godly? Is that of God or somebody else? Let's attribute to those things. Those type moments, you're going to get a shot. That's how, when you're going, I don't know if I can really talk to my kids about sex. I'll guarantee you sit in front of your TV for just a few minutes, you will have something to talk about and go, it's not great, but that's an entrance into a lot of different topics if you want it. And if you don't, then I'd say they're going to hear it from somebody else. Ephesians 4 says this. So God gave himself the apostles, prophets, evangelists. I know you've read this one before, but I want you to see this highlighted verse and think about your kids. They will no longer be infants tossed back and forth by the waves, blown here and there by every wind of teaching, and by the cunning and craftiness of people and their deceitful scheming. The author behind the deceit is a guy named Satan. It's confusing. Puberty is confusing in and of itself, but then you add on what culture is doing, sometimes what we're not saying, sometimes our silence, and all of a sudden it gets very, very confusing. So we're going to shoot for discernment. How do we do that? How do we notice this? I don't know if you've seen this movie called Wonder. It's several years old now, but had a kid who wore a little space helmet and was being made fun of and bullied and all that stuff. Well, the teacher, who was the good person in this show, says, when you have a choice between being right or kind, always choose kindness. Now, that sounds really good. And as I sat there in the theater, I thought, that's really sweet. But then when you think about it a little bit more, you go, are the choices right and kind? Is that a true dichotomy? Are those really opposites? They're not. But the movie made me feel that first. And then the more I thought about it and discerned it, I thought, you can be right and kind. Isn't that what the good book tells us? When someone's caught in sin, be gentle with them, be kind. Yeah. But your kids may go, and I'll guarantee you some of them think this, if you disagree with me on anything, you do not love me. You're not being nice. It has nothing to do with it. I'm trying to stop you before you do something really dumb. This is not a true dichotomy. Let me show you one more, and this is a little more with current day. Obviously, we've got a culture saying, gay has an agenda for gays, and especially as it relates to religion. And you look at this little cartoon and say, love over verses. Is that true? Is that a dichotomy? How do you know that love is the greatest of these things? It's the verses that tell you that, right? The verses actually show you the character and nature of Jesus, who would also say, there are some verses in here that you need to pay attention to. If you don't think I'm serious about it, go read a little Old Testament for a little bit, and you'll see there's some things I do not like. I do not want to happen. And New Testament as well. But love is something that is a quality of every Christian and everything we do. So how does that work out? You need to help your kids understand and see some of these, help them interpret these a little bit closer, because it's a very, very slippery slope into, you've got to just love everything. There's nothing that's wrong in this world, and you're wrong to tell us it's wrong. Here's some commercials. This is the world your kids live in. You like that one? The girls in my class usually do not like this one very much for some reason. Another one? See what you think of this. If it had an adult woman, that would still be on the edge for me. When you put a child and tell her she's going to be sexy, innocence is sexier than you think, that makes me mad. It's wrong, especially as you deal with child pornography that's out there. Theological balance is what you're trying to get your kids to do. And when you look at the woman in John 8, it's a woman who was guilty, absolutely guilty of sexual sin. So how am I going to tell my kids and balance this deal? I don't know if you've heard in the last few years, there's been this real pushback on purity culture. And the question I always want to ask is, okay, you don't think that's a good idea. Purity culture is a bad idea. What do you put in place of that? Impurity culture? Mm-hmm. Is that what we're going for? I'm not. And I don't think God does either. Has it been taught poorly in the past? Absolutely. Here's a great example of Jesus dealing with sexual sin that a lot of our kids are going to get into. We've gotten into. Woman who was guilty, no doubt about it. And they, of course, were trying to stone her, which they were using her just as much as any man had ever used, that woman. Jesus steps in and protects her. He offers his protection. And that's what we call grace, because she's guilty. And he steps between her and the mob. And that's where the younger generation would go, hey, I like that story. That's great. That's Jesus. That's our guy. But then the story goes on, and he says to this woman, go and sin no more. You see the grace and the truth? Both within one story. Protection before he goes into correction mode. That's awesome. That's Jesus. Did he love her? Absolutely. Did he tell the truth? Absolutely. Your kids need to hear and understand, if one of those is missing, you don't have Jesus. And it can go either way. Older generation loves the go and sin no more. But remember the grace. Remember the grace. And they're a match set. And if one's gone, you're in trouble. You have something that's not Jesus. So when I teach kids about this type of stuff, I start off with a lesson on grace first. We start there. And then we talk about, hey, here's how we're called to live and to be. And I hope some of the stuff we said today will help you in that, at least kind of crystallize a little more about what the true direction and mission you're called to. And I'd love to pray over you if I could, and then we'll be done. Father, I thank you for these good folks. I appreciate their attention today. And I know afternoons are hard anyway, but I thank you for their willingness to be the best parents they can possibly be, that they will hold you up as the model of Father and Heavenly Father for us, and that we need to see both grace and truth in all we do. Help us to present that to our kids so that they will understand that more deeply. And help us, Father, to live that out in our own lives. Help them to know that we are fragile and frail at times, but that by your grace we are forgiven. We pray all this together in your name. Amen. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.